56 years old. That's the average age Americans realize they don't have enough saved to retire. Not 30, not 45, 56. That's barely 9 years before most people hope to stop working, and by then, the math almost never works out. Here's the part that should scare you. Most of these families weren't reckless. They didn't gamble their savings away in Las Vegas. They paid their bills. They raised their kids. They worked hard, year after year, decade after decade. And yet, somewhere in their 40s, the retirement plan quietly fell apart. If you're over 40 or getting close to it, this video is for you. Because the mistakes that wreck a retirement don't look like mistakes when you're making them. They look like normal life. A bigger house, a new car, helping your kid with tuition. None of it feels dangerous in the moment. But by the time people notice the damage, they often have less than 10 years to fix it. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why so many families hit their 40s and 50s with almost nothing saved, what the 4 biggest mistakes actually are, and what the families who recover from this hole do differently than the ones who never catch up. Stick around, because the last mistake on this list is the one almost nobody talks about, and it might be quietly draining your future right now. Let's start with the first one. Mistake number 1, lifestyle catching up to income. Here's something that trips up almost every family at some point. Your income goes up. Your spending goes up right along with it. Researchers have a name for this. They call it lifestyle inflation. Think about it this way. In your 20s, you're renting a small apartment, driving an older car, and splitting a pizza with roommates because that's all you can afford. Then you get a promotion, then another one. By your late 30s, you're in a bigger house, a nicer car, private school for the kids, and vacations that actually leave the state. None of that sounds bad on its own. The problem is what's missing. The percentage of your income going toward retirement never grew at the same pace as your lifestyle did. Here's the hidden truth. A person making $50,000 a year who saves 10% is putting away $5,000 annually. That same person, 10 years later, making $120,000 a year, should theoretically be saving $12,000 a year if they kept that same 10% habit. But most people don't. Their savings rate actually drops as their income rises, because every raise gets absorbed by a bigger mortgage, a nicer car payment, or a lifestyle that quietly expanded to match the paycheck. The lesson here isn't to live like you're broke forever. It's to treat every raise as a fork in the road. Half goes to living better. Half goes straight into retirement before you even see it in your checking account. Because the version of you at 55 is depending on the version of you at 40 to make that split. But this is where things get interesting, because lifestyle inflation alone doesn't sink most families. It's the second mistake that turns a manageable gap into a real crisis. Mistake number 2, rating retirement accounts for short-term needs. Most people don't realize how easy it is to quietly bleed a retirement account dry, one withdrawal at a time. Here's how it usually starts. The roof needs replacing, or a medical bill shows up that insurance doesn't fully cover, or a job loss creates a gap of a few months with no income. In that moment, a 401k sitting there with $40,000 in it looks like a lifeline. So people borrow against it, or they cash it out entirely. It feels responsible in the moment. It's their money, after all, and it's solving a real problem. Here's the hidden cost most people never calculate. Every dollar pulled out in your 40s isn't just a dollar. It's a dollar that would have had 15 to 25 more years to compound. Pull out $20,000 at age 45, and depending on how the market performs, that money could have grown into $80,000 or more by retirement age. That's not an exaggeration. That's simply how compounding works over 2 decades. And there's a second cost people forget. Early withdrawals often come with taxes and penalties that shrink the amount even further before it ever reaches your hands. So the $20,000 you needed might actually cost you $27,000 or more once the IRS takes its share. The families who recover from this don't treat retirement accounts as an emergency fund. They build a separate cash cushion specifically so the retirement money never gets touched. It's not glamorous advice, but it's the difference between a retirement account that grows in silence for 30 years and one that gets chipped away every time life gets hard. However, There's one problem nobody talks about that's even more damaging than early withdrawals, and it usually comes wrapped in love. Mistake number 3. Sacrificing retirement to fund their kids' futures. This one is painful to talk about because it comes from a good place. Parents want to give their children a better start than they had. But there's a quiet trade-off happening in millions of American households, and almost nobody says it out loud. Picture two families. Family A stops contributing to their 401k for 8 years so they can cover private school tuition and then help with a down payment on their child's first house. Family B keeps contributing to retirement the entire time, and their child takes out student loans and saves for their own down payment the slower way. 15 years later, Family A is behind on retirement by roughly $150,000, based on what those contributions would have grown into. Family B's child has some student loan debt, but debt that can be paid down over 10 or 15 years with a normal salary. Family A, meanwhile, is now 60 years old with a retirement gap that's nearly impossible to close in the years they have left. Here's the hard truth financial planners will tell you, even though it feels uncomfortable to say. Your child can borrow money for college. They can borrow money for a house. Nobody will ever loan you money for retirement. There's no such thing as a retirement loan you pay back over 30 years. Once those working years are gone, they're gone. This doesn't mean don't help your kids. It means help them without erasing your own future. Contribute to your retirement account first, every single year, no exceptions. Then decide what's left over for their tuition or their down payment. Airlines tell you to put your own oxygen mask on first for a reason. The same logic applies to money. Most people don't realize this next mistake is often invisible until it's too late, because it doesn't feel like a mistake at all. It feels like patience. Mistake number 4. Underestimating how much you'll actually need. Here's a number that surprises almost everyone. To maintain a modest, comfortable lifestyle for 25 to 30 years of retirement, most financial experts estimate a person needs somewhere between $1 million and $1.5 million saved, depending on where they live and what their expenses look like. That number sounds enormous. And that's exactly the problem. Because it sounds so large and so far away, many people in their 30s and 40s mentally file retirement savings under later. They tell themselves there's still time. They'll catch up when the mortgage is paid off, or when the kids are out of the house, or when they get that next promotion. But here's what almost nobody calculates. The single biggest advantage in retirement savings isn't how much money you put in. It's how much time that money has to grow. A dollar saved at age 30 could be worth roughly 8 times more by retirement than a dollar saved at age 50, simply because of how many years it had to compound. That means waiting until your late 40s or 50s to get serious about retirement doesn't just cost you a few years. It costs you the majority of your compounding power. The families who end up okay in their 60s are almost never the ones who save the most money. They're the ones who started the earliest, even if what they started with was small. If you're in your 40s right now and you haven't started, or you've fallen behind, that's not a reason to give up. It's a reason to get aggressive today, because the 10 or 15 years you have left still matter enormously. Now here's where things get uncomfortable, because there's a pattern connecting all 4 of these mistakes, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every single one of these mistakes shares the same root cause. They all happen because retirement feels distant, while today's expenses feel urgent. The roof leak is urgent. The tuition bill is urgent. The bigger house feels urgent when your family is growing. Retirement, by comparison, feels like a problem for some future version of you who will somehow have more money and more discipline than you do right now. That future version of you doesn't exist. The only person who can fix this is the person reading this sentence, today, at whatever age you are right now. So what actually works? Families who successfully turn this around in their 40s and 50s tend to do 3 specific things. First, they automate their retirement contributions so the decision to save isn't something they have to make every single month with willpower. The money moves before they ever see it. Second, they separate their emergency savings from their retirement savings completely, so a bad month never turns into a permanent setback for their future. Third, they get brutally honest about the real cost of helping their kids financially, and they make sure their own retirement contribution happens first every year without exception. None of these three habits require a six-figure income. They require consistency, and they require starting now instead of waiting for some perfect moment that never actually arrives. Here's the final thought I want to leave you with. Retirement isn't ruined by one bad decision. It's usually the slow accumulation of a dozen decisions that each felt reasonable in the moment. The bigger house, the withdrawal to cover a bad month, the tuition payment that quietly replaced a decade of contributions. None of it feels like failure while it's happening. But the families who fixed this story in their 40s and 50s all have one thing in common. They stopped waiting for the right moment and started treating their own future as seriously as they treat everyone else's needs. If you're behind right now, you're not alone, and it's not too late. But the only way forward is to start today with whatever you have and let time do the rest of the work. Subscribe for more videos about money, investing, and building wealth.